You're listening to Rule the Galaxy podcast. I'm Vanessa Marshall, Harrison Dulon, Star Wars Rebels. May the Force be with you always.
Hey, Star Wars fans and Rule the Galaxy fans. If you are watching on YouTube, you'll see our good friend Scott Ryfun just took a drink out of his Rule the Galaxy Tervis mug, whatever it's called. I don't know what he's drinking, but it is chapter 286 of the Rule the Galaxy podcast. Another one of those odd shows because we all have lives and we're all busy, and occasionally Scott Ryfun and I can segment out an hour of our days to hang out, talk Star Wars, and other topics. So thanks for being around. Thanks for being involved. Watch us on YouTube. Listen to us on your podcast platform of choice. You know where to find us. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. But now, let's say hi to Scott. How you doing, Scott?
Hello, Joe. What do you know?
I know that just like you in the fall, my life gets busy.
Yeah, you see I'm wearing my I Heart shirt today, and oftentimes when I'm on with you, I'll wear a Star Wars shirt because there are plenty. But today is a football day, so I'm going to go broadcast a game this evening at the stadium. Yeah, it's a long day. It's a long day. Long night last night. Did trivia till like 10 something last night, and then got up at 3 this morning and went into work. Did my shift, did my thing, got back here doing my thing with you. Got a few more things to do. Closed some business this week. It's been a busy one. It
is. I tell you what, when you add football into the regular life and then trivia into the regular life, it becomes a little hectic, a little crazy. And you and I are always doing the side hustles, right? We're always making some extra cash, some extra coins somewhere off something. So we're businessmen.
Businessman, make it happen.
We got to make it happen. Yeah. Eddie Murphy right there. That's reminding me of what Trading Places, right?
Was it? Oh, I was thinking more. I think it was the Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Maybe it was.
Maybe it was the beginning of that, where he's getting the blank credit cards.
The blank credit cards, yes, because in Beverly Hills Cop Part 1, it was cigarettes, correct?
Cigarettes, that's right.
There we go. Okay. Either way, whatever. It was Eddie Murphy.
That's right.
So outside of football, trivia, regular job, what's been going on in the Scott Ryfun world?
Sleep. It's really great. When I have this opportunity, it's my new hobby now is to sleep. And I found it very exciting. It's really, hadn't really tried it a lot over the years, but now I'm going, there's I got 2 hours between here and there. I'm sleep for one of those. No, that's about it. I'm just sitting around. I actually, you know what we did? And we're going to do it again. What is today? Today's the September the 6th, and we're recording. When are we releasing this?
Possibly the 6th or the 7th.
Possibly the 6th or the 7th. Okay. Depends on how much editing it takes before.
That's right.
You don't want to commit to anything in case I say something ridiculous, which is going to happen.
Probably.
But we got our Kiss cover band together.
Oh.
And on the 15th, we did a little rehearsal a couple weeks ago. And on the 15th, we're going to do our second rehearsal because we also are all busy and have lives. And the first one was really good.
I have to ask, what is the Kiss cover band's name?
It is Ryfun's Army.
Oh, okay.
That's what you're witnessing on the camera is a Scott Ryfun signature pick.
I love it.
With a Ryfun's Army logo on it.
I kind of need that concert shirt now, a Ryfun's Army band shirt. I think that would be very cool to wear around. People would be
I did not come up with the name. I did not come up with the name. One of the guys in the band did not like the name that we had already come up with and we're going to use, which was the Sergei Kaczynski Orchestra.
Oh
And
my
but and the reason for that is because I love deep cuts that nobody will understand. And so you'll have to look that one up, I guess. But he was like, I hate that. I don't understand it. We explained it to him and he went, I still hate it and I still don't understand it.
gosh.
So he said, well, why don't we just call it Ryfun's Army? And then all of a sudden everybody else went, yes, that's a thing. So anyway, we had our first little rehearsal a couple of weeks ago. We're going to have a second one next weekend. And you might catch us out somewhere.
That's awesome. That
Not,
is fantastic.
not in Indianapolis, but
No, but still, I mean, being out and about and playing, that's a pretty cool thing. I have no musical talent whatsoever. So
and understand, this is not a Kiss tribute band. It's a Kiss cover band. Okay. Which means my ass is not getting in tights and makeup. We're just playing songs.
Okay.
So just understand that if you do come to see us, if we ever play anywhere.
I kind of really would like to see Scott Ryfun in the tights, boots, and the makeup, though.
Well, there are dreams for that. But and I may do it as part of my OnlyFans launch. But
oh gosh.
Otherwise, no.
Steve Glosson would pay how much money to see you in that garb? I can only imagine.
Well, if Steve's going to pay me, then I might do it. It just depends on if Steve can take out a loan and come up with the dough, I may do it. But it's there's a maxim that I have in life, which is everything has a price.
I do like that.
Everything has a price. And you just have to determine what that price is. And if Steve Glosson can come up with that price, then I will gladly do all of that.
There we go.
Until such time.
Between Patreon, OnlyFans, we need to find out what the price is for Scott Ryfun, folks. So if you have interest in this, please email us at rulethegalaxysw@gmail.com, and I will forward those on to Scott and see what the number has to be, because I think that would be interesting.
All right. We'll see what the number is. We'll see how the number starts adding up. Hey, let me ask you something, Joe.
Yeah.
What's your Star Wars story looking like right now?
What is my Star Wars story looking like right now?
Yeah, what is your Star Wars story looking like right now?
It's looking kind of bleak, kind of boring. I mean, we're in the lull. The Star Wars story right now is me and the guys doing the podcast because there's not much else going on. I mean, I feel like my Star Wars story overall is fantastic and fun and lots of good stories and everything like that. But as far as present day Star Wars story, I guess I'm waiting around to see if Skeleton Crew is going to be something that sparks my interest.
I'm going to tell you one thing. I am excited about Skeleton Crew. Skeleton Crew has got me intrigued. It's got some things that are a little different from Star Wars, but not necessarily should never be in Star Wars, because Star Wars is a gigantic galaxy.
Correct.
So
I think
I'm jazzed about it.
We kept seeing things where people were saying that Skeleton Crew was going to be the Goonies of Star Wars, and we all agreed that's fine. That could be fun. But once we watched the preview of it, we felt more like it was the ET of Star Wars. The neighborhood, the subdivision, kids, school. I mean, it just felt more the ET kind of realm.
But remember that if it's an ET, then it is also a poltergeist. You can't separate ET and poltergeist. You can't.
Why can we not?
Oh, come on. You don't know the history of this.
Same neighborhood? Same.
No, here's the deal. And the funny thing is, before I learned all of this stuff, I kind of intuited it anyway. I used to talk about how Poltergeist came out like I think a week before ET.
Wow, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, and I remember I used to watch, having watched both of them, I would go, there's something very similar about the picture of suburbia at that moment that they both paint. The family household, the little, look-alike suburb neighborhoods. The boy's always got Star Wars figures and posters on his wall. It's just they were always, to me, two very, very similar images of suburbia. And of course, Spielberg directs one and produces one, co-writes the credit on that. But also I started thinking about this, and this is all before I learned it was real. I started thinking, Toby Hooper really didn't have a lot under his belt when he made Poltergeist. And how did he make a movie that looks so Spielberg unless maybe Spielberg kind of made this himself? So you find out over time that Spielberg, after doing Close Encounters, starts working on this alien invasion movie that eventually came to be called, went through a couple of titles, but eventually came to be called Night Skies. And as he is in Hawaii with everybody who did Raiders of the Lost Ark, Harrison Ford, Melissa Matheson, of course, George, they're talking, and he realizes Melissa Matheson is the person who wrote the Black Stallion, and he loved the Black Stallion, loved the way it was written, and they start talking about his screenplay that he's working on, this Night Skies thing, and she really likes the nicey part of it, but that's the story she wants to tell, and it's kind of the story of his. It's kind of an allegory for his having been left by his father. I mean, think about it. E.T. is abandoned on this planet.
100%.
And the Spielbergs divorced at some point. His father went off, and so it's really kind of him grappling his way through the divorce. And they spend a lot of time talking about this. Well, they wind up splitting the movie into two. So E.T. is the alien part of Night Skies, and the invasion of the home part becomes ghosts, and it's Poltergeist.
Oh,
so they're really out of the same thing. Then I find out Spielberg is on the set of that film Poltergeist for every day except 3. That the cast and crew are telling the rags of the day, Variety and Hollywood Reporter, they're telling those guys, yeah, if we have a question, we defer to everybody defers to Steven. And Steven's on set every day, and Steven is answering all the questions. So, and Steven is doing blocking, and Steven is setting up camera shots, and to the point that apparently Steven Spielberg actually had to take out an ad saying, "I didn't direct this movie. Toby Hooper directed this movie. I'm sorry that it looks like I directed this movie." And why else would you do that other than, you got to satisfy the DGA, the Directors Guild, and say, no, he really did it. He should get the credit. No, it's okay. But there was almost apparently like an arbitration deal where Spielberg almost got the directing credit for the movie because there was so much of that, so much him in that movie, and he had so much control over it.
This is why I love having you on here, because these are things I'd never even heard of my entire life. And I love both those movies. So to hear that that's how that came together.
Yeah, they both kind of came from the same seed.
Yeah.
Then they came out a week apart, but when you watch them, that's the thing that always got me. That's the thing that made me start wondering about this, and then to find out it was all true, was just that the picture of suburbia they paint is the same picture of suburbia.
100%.
And so it's almost like they happen in the same neighborhood, although they don't. It's almost like they do.
It seemed like it. Looking back at it, I could almost see it being the same neighborhood. So you asked me about my Star Wars story. I have to ask you, because I usually do anyway. How is your Star Wars story? Meaning, is there more Star Wars story coming?
Oh, like the podcast?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. I would like to do more of it. And I have gotten very close to reaching out to some people and going, hey, why don't we sit down and do this? But it's just, and I've got some thoughts in my head for how to streamline the whole process to make it easier. Here's the problem. I am really, really anal retentive about that podcast.
Well, sure.
And so like if you were to sit in the room with me while I was editing it, you would be driven insane because I go over every sentence and I try to just really make everything as clean and smooth as possible. The other thing I try to do is find ways to remove myself from it as much as possible.
Gotcha.
So like I'm asking questions or I'm egging someone on. I try to, if they say something around that you can pick up what they're saying without me having to, be the voice of the person saying it. I try to do that because it's, it's my Star Wars stories, whoever's on the show's Star Wars story. So it's very time and labor intensive. And I remember telling myself one day, if I got a really nice mic and that great Rode mixer that I really wanted, I would probably just do it. And I have those and I haven't done it. So I'm always thinking of ways to streamline it. I have a lot of thoughts in my head. I don't have all of the thoughts ready yet.
Okay.
So,
Well,
but yeah, I'd like to do more of it.
What I would like to at least offer or suggest is we have been super blessed to have just some incredible guests across the board at Rule the Galaxy. And I know you have no problem finding people to be on or having people that would want to be on, but man, I would really like to go to some of these people that we've had on the show that, Vanessa Marshall or Drew Karpyshyn or Nika Futterman, just Mark Thompson.
Yeah,
And
I'd love
just,
to have any of those guys.
And because I interact with them and just check in and say hi and thank you for being on the show. And, would you ever want to come on again? All those things. And they're just the sweetest people. And I'm thinking, man, if you could do an in-depth dive with some of the great people we've had on here, man, I could only imagine what some of these would be like, because you do, it's very well produced. It's very professional sounding. I think they would appreciate that. To take your way of doing things to go along with what they do and their passion. I think it would be really fun. So if there are more, in the past I was like, oh, me or Alfie or somebody, we'd love to do an Alfie a Star Wars story. But you know what I thought? Who the heck are we? We know people that are involved with Star Wars that we could be like, hey, here's our contribution. Here's some great guests for you to do this with.
No, but here's the thing. I want that, but I also want Joe, and not just you, Joe, but just Joe on the street. That is a big part of why I do that, actually, is because of Joe on the street. Or why I did that. I guess I can't say I do it now because I'm actively not working on one. But it's funny because I have, you talk about the bank of people that you can reach out to for that. I have a file on my email that is my Star Wars story candidates, people who've written me over the years who've said, I would like to be on this podcast. Now, I haven't gotten one in maybe a year or two because I haven't put out an episode in a couple of years. Right. But I keep that file because at some point I will reach out to it. But a lot of the letters and the emails that I get from people are, look, I know I'm not some guy who has a big podcast. Look, I know I'm not some guy who's on the TV show or, whatever. But I would like to do an episode. And it's like, no, you're very much who I want. I want to tell as many people's stories as possible. And, it includes everybody. It's not just people who have a big name. In fact, I know big names get eyeballs and earballs. Are there earballs?
Sure.
Do ears have balls?
Earbuds.
Anyway, you get ears with the big names, and because you put it out there and you put a thumbnail and it's, oh my goodness, there's so and so,
right.
And I'd love to have that. I think Vanessa Marshall would be a fantastic guest. Every time I hear her on a podcast with you or RFR or anybody, she's just amazing. She's just great. She would be terrific, but so would some guy nobody's ever heard of in their lives. And sometimes they're even more interesting because they talk about things, they have a perspective that nobody has seen, nobody's heard, nobody's shared. But I will also tell you this, every time I get excited about, maybe I'll dip my toe back in the water and do this, fandom does some awful, terrible thing that really disappoints me. Yeah. And that is where we stand right now, my friend.
Well, and so that's where we go back to my Star Wars story, as you asked earlier.
Yeah.
I guess I'll ask the question. Did you watch The Acolyte?
No, I didn't. And let me tell you this.
And neither did Clausen. We had him on. He didn't either.
But let me tell you, here's my Star Wars story. And I will tell you that I'm doing Scarif Scuttlebutt with Rogaska.
Oh yeah.
Who's a great guy. You guys should hook up.
We should do more connectivity. We just I really like this week. It's just been too tough to get the regular crew together. But you're right.
I understand.
We should do more collabs.
I really like him and what he does. I like you guys and what you do. I love, the RFR guys. Obviously, goes without saying. I love the Deuce Cast guys. I have a man crush on Steve. But we were having this discussion the other day, and he asked me, have you seen The Acolyte? And I said, no. And I said, there's a reason I haven't watched The Acolyte. And the reason is that I knew that everything that has happened to this point was going to happen within the fan community. And I did not want to have to get in the middle of that fight. Now, weirdly, I wound up in the middle of a small branch of the fight anyway, even though I wasn't even taking sides, but merely saying, wait a minute, what you said was not exactly accurate, gets you branded awful, terrible things.
Yeah.
But no, I literally have avoided Acolyte to this point for the sole reason that I could tell going into it, it was going to be massively divisive to fandom, and I just didn't want to have to engage in that. And I knew that if I want, somebody asked me early on while it was going on, if I was watching it, and I said no, because if I do, I will have an opinion, and I don't want to have an opinion. So I've stayed away to this point. Yeah, one day I will watch it. Eventually, I will catch it.
So,
but no,
I watched it. Obviously, the guys and I, we all discussed it. Alfie had some very strong comments about it, which is Alfie.
Which is Alfie. And I love Alfie for that.
Oh, I do too. But, I actually watched it a second time through because the guys at Panther Tracks, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster, who I think the world of, just great guys. Yes. They actually said, hey, we've been on your show plenty. Would you want to come on ours? And I said, sure. And they go, great. We would like you on for an Acolyte review show. And I was like, okay. And look, I want all Star Wars to be good Star Wars. I do. I want it to unite the fans, not divide the fans. But I did the show. And we all three spoke very openly and honestly about the show without anger and hatred and all that.
Why can't we do that as a fandom? Why can't we do that as a whole?
I don't know. Because I think if you speak openly and honestly in one direction, it is looked as hatred. And really, it's, there are people who tell me, this is so great, you have to watch this. And then I look at them like, well, that wasn't that great. Why are you telling me that? Oh, you just hate it because of this. You just hate it because of that. But I think if the opposite was set up that way, and I said, oh, you need to watch it because of this, I don't know if it would be the same fight the other way. I don't know.
No, it absolutely would not be. Would absolutely not be. They would say, oh, you have to understand. Yeah, I don't dislike it for the reasons. And you know what a lot of that is? And it's one of these things I've been thinking about lately is we as a society tend to, rather than address each other's arguments or points of view, we ascribe bad motivations, which is not just a thing that happened to R5D4. We ascribe ill intent and bad motivations to the other people that we, if we're disagreeing, somebody on the other side of the issue, you're not just on the other side of the issue where we could actually debate the issue. You're on the other side of the issue because you're a bad person for these reasons.
Yep.
And until we break out of ascribing ill intent to people we disagree with, we'll never get anywhere. And that's as a fandom and as a society. Scott Ryfun has spoken.
I agree with you. I try to be the great unifier. I will say this: I am my dad and my mom. If there's a person who's 50% of their parents, I'm 50% my mom, 50% my dad. And my dad is an all-out, be out in front of you, type A personality, sales guy, and my mom is a servant leader who puts everyone before her. Wouldn't say poop if her mouth was full of it, and wants everyone to get along. So I have those outgoing capabilities of my father, but man, deep inside, all I want to do is keep everyone calm, keep everyone, copacetic. And so it's a very big battle for me because every now and then my dad jumps out of me and says things that a type A personality would say. And then I immediately regret it. And I just go around to everybody apologizing for the next few days.
Oh no.
But it's, I do want that. I want Star Wars to be good. I saw we talked about it on the show. Stephen Kent.
Stephen Kent.
Great guy. There's another Star Wars story for you right there.
Yeah, I love Stephen Kent. He is 100% on my list if I ever resume. 100%. Actually, I will tell you this really quickly. In July, I went on vacation and I did a series of interviews with different people just about issues of the day. And he was one of the guys I wanted for that, and I did that. So when I left, there would be a show, and he was one of the guys that I asked to do that with me, and he was fantastic there. He's just good guy, smart guy, He and I will not agree on every issue. He and I have argued over issues, but we can, and we do, and it's okay.
It is. But when he saw the stuff about Skeleton Crew, and when he saw that Jude Law was saying, this is just going to be fun. I saw Stephen Kent tweet, can we just hope that Star Wars is fun? Can we just have a show that's just fun?
Yes.
And that's what I was like, that's what I want. I mean, I want to get away from being 53 years old and think like a 12-year-old again just while I'm watching Star Wars. That's all I want. Just give me that time frame where I'm just being a 12-year-old enjoying it, and then I'll go back to the 53-year-old man that I have to be in real life.
You know, we do a lot of discussing about, you know, what Star Wars is and what it's about and what, you know, the meaning behind it and the values that it imparts and all of that. But the reality is that's not why we fell in love with it. I mean, I think deep down it is, and subconsciously it is. But as a 6-year-old, I didn't come out of the theater and go, "This is the greatest movie I will ever see in my life," which I said to my brother. My brother went, "You don't know that. You're only 6." But I didn't come out of there saying that because I said, you know, this is built on this archetype mythology that every society seems to be manifesting. I said it because it had these characters that just I'd never seen before, and I loved. You know, there was an aesthetic, there was an action and a dynamic, and there was a rhythm and a cadence to the language, and there were the sounds, and it was the entire experience, and I couldn't interpret any deeper meaning to it. It was there, and I'm sure that played on me because I think it continues to play on me. But it for some reason we've decided that Star Wars has to be didactic, that it has to be instructional at all times, that it has to have a message and it has to impart. And it doesn't necessarily have to have a message unless that message is be a good person and defeat evil.
I think so much in today's world, we've gotten to a point where we remove that, hey, it's better to be good and get rid of the evil. Everything now is, I mean, you look at even in our comic books and even in our superheroes, you got to break them down, deconstruct them, and show where they have their faults. We have to show them where they are evil at one point in time, or where they did something. And sometimes it's good to just say, hey, you know, it's good to be a good person and to fight the good fight for the good things. And
well, you know, the problem is that we've kind of, for whatever reason, there's a base morality, good and evil, but sometimes the dynamics of that good and evil they're kind of a sliding scale. You know, they're kind of subjective and they're kind of based on the era. And, you know, who is a good and virtuous man in one era is, as we are watching in this era, is looked down upon as a horrible and terrible, immoral human being when, you know, the virtues and morals of the day were that person was an outstanding individual. But there's still, within all of that framework, there is a larger good and a larger evil that is, to me, really what Star Wars is about. You know, we will debate identity politics till we're blue in the face, but what we will not debate is it's bad to kill people. You know, I mean, we will not debate that it is bad to kidnap people and blow up their planet. You know, and those are the moral quandaries that they give us in Star Wars that are so wonderful and instructive. And again, I don't mean this to be a jumping off point, but it's why to me the sequel trilogy is a failure, because it is more in the weeds about the individual fine-tuned morality issues of the current day, which will not be the same in 15 or 20 years because that scale always slides. So I point this out. George Lucas in 1987 does an interview with Starlog where somebody asks him about, well, you know, when you do that next trilogy, hopefully you're going to have some women involved. And he goes, why would I have women involved? You know, we're talking about a war. Women don't fight wars. Why would I do that? I mean, if you want to make one up where you have women fighting a war, fine, but I'm not. Well, that's not the morality of now. You know, that's not, it's inconceivable that people would say that just regularly. But George Lucas did, the guy who created Star Wars. So when we start narrowing down into these, you know, the identity politics issues of modern day, we don't seem to realize that we're not creating something that is timeless. We're creating something that's based on kind of the current value system that is always kind of on a sliding scale. There is a certain, I hate the term moral relativism, or I hate the concept of moral relativism, but there's a broader morality, and then there is kind of the relative morality within that is really, certain things affix themselves to certain eras. That's what I appreciate about Star Wars. Again, the Star Wars versus Star Trek, to me, the morality of the era to me has always been Star Trek, where the broader morality is Star Wars.
I can see that.
You didn't know you were getting this today, did you?
No, I look, when I have you on, that's why before pre-show, we discussed, hey, let's just throw stuff at the wall and see what we talk about, right? I mean, there's things we can talk about, but I like the conversations that we have because they do go in different directions. And it's these times where it's between shows and between movies and things like that. It's good to have open discussions about the overall storyline and what's going on in the Star Wars universe. So I have no problem with it. I like it that I feel smarter after I have shows with you, Glosson, a few other people.
Like you feel smarter compared to us? Is that what it is?
No.
That's why you're like, whew, man, if that guy's supposed to be smart, I'm brilliant.
No, not at all. But hey, we were talking about what's coming up, and we did bring up the Skeleton Crew.
Yes.
I've never been a Lego person per se. It's never been my cup of tea.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the Star Wars Lego video games, and I'm not a video game person, but they were fun,
Yes.
And yes,
I'm exactly where you are on this.
I do have this because my wife said Captain Rex is one of your favorites, and I haven't even put it together. It just sits there as a nice display behind me. But the Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy Lego that's coming out. What, next week, I believe.
Oh, is it that soon? Wow.
Yeah. Look, we were talking about Star Wars being fun. What an easy way for them to just let it be fun. You don't have to follow canon. You don't have to follow any kind of set rules. Just go out and let people have fun. And for me, I look at it and think, gosh, how many 6-year-old kids are going to see this, laugh about it, have fun with it, and then go, wait a minute, there's a whole story of movies that go along with this, and this was just kind of an entry point for me. So I'm looking forward to it, and I hope it is just fun. I hope it's exactly what it should be, is bringing kids into it, letting you have fun in the Star Wars universe, letting us laugh about things that we take too seriously.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you on that. Again, I think we need that. I think Star Wars needs that. And honestly, there will be a good evil dynamic to it. There will be broader messages to it, but you don't have to weave in today's messages in order to make that work. In fact, I think, again, to me, that's counter to what Star Wars is and does, because Star Wars is about the timelessness of it, period. So, I'm excited about Skeleton Crew. I think you're right. I think it's going to be fun. And by God, wouldn't it be great to have fun Star Wars again?
Well, since we don't have Star Wars movies anymore right now, it's good to have some fun in between them, right?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
The other thing I had on here was the Star Wars Reign of the Empire trilogy books that are coming out. Have you seen these? I know you're like me; you keep up with the books a lot, but do you keep up with these books right now?
I saw that they were coming out, but I haven't seen anything else on them since then.
So one in February 25, then spring of 26, then spring of 27. They're about Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, Saw Gerrera, and it's going to have. I guess it's in that meaty part of after Bad Batch, all that, the Revenge of the Sith, the end of Clone Wars, and the beginning of Rogue One and Rebels. So it's going to be in that meaty part right there, and it's a lot of the stories going on behind the scenes of the rebellion buildup, the Senate before it was taken apart, all that. So look, that hits me right in the good spot. That's a sweet spot for me to see that transition. So I definitely will be. I haven't. Man, I used to be a voracious reader of everything. Every novel that came out, I consumed it the first, as soon as it came out. But I've definitely slowed down what I've been doing in the novel world. But
Yes.
these are right there, right in the good spot for me that I'm going to be taking those in.
Yeah, I slowed down significantly when one of the authors suggested that half the country be thrown into a wood chipper. At that point, I went, why should I hand my money to a guy who wants me to die?
Yes.
I don't understand that. So I also gave up on the books for a while. Now, what I have been doing lately, because you missed the books, and to be honest with you, I did buy like JJM, when he put out what's it? It's right over there, Living Force.
Oh, Living Force.
I'm gonna get that. I love John Jackson Miller.
It is. Well, you and I talked about it because I think I had just finished reading it.
That's right. You got like a comp copy, didn't you?
I did. I got a digital copy, which I can't share. Sorry, it won't let me share, and they asked me not to share, so I'm not.
Yes,
and then
of course.
I got the hard copy, which, come on. I mean, JJM, we both love. We love his work. He takes this so seriously. I loved his setup of that book and how he said, I first laid out storyboard maps because if I can't see where things are, I can't write the right story.
Yeah, him and the maps, that's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I love JJM to the point that I have no love for Batman 89. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, fellow nerds. I don't. But he's doing a Batman 89 sequel novel, and I'm excited about it. I will be buying John Jackson Miller's Batman sequel novel. But one of the things that I've been doing outside of occasionally buying the one book from the one person that I really, really like, novel wise, I bought some other books as well. When we'll talk about that. Cause I know you had Clayton. I think you had Clayton on the show, didn't you? Clayton and Kelly Knox.
Oh yes. Yeah. Their book, the Return of the Jedi Visual Archive.
I'll get to that. Cause that book is unbelievable. But, what I've been doing is I've been going on, eBay and Amazon and getting used copies of a lot of the books, and that way I do not have to pay my money directly to a person who hates me and getting some of these. And the sad part was one of the books, I'm not gonna say which one, I got a copy. I couldn't find a cheap copy of it. I finally found a cheap copy of it. It came in, it was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. I was lying on the bed when I got it. I was looking through it. I was like, you wouldn't know this was used. It is absolutely stunning. And so I put it down on the bed and I got up and I went to go to host trivia. And while I'm at trivia, my wife sends me a photo and says, did you mean to leave this book on the bed? And I said, yeah. And she sent me a photo and the book has been devoured. Sweetie got a hold of it.
I was going to say, in a good way or a bad way?
No, not in a good way. Sweetie got a hold of that gorgeous book and mauled it. And the funny thing is she hasn't done that in probably 5 years. But for some reason, she decided she was going to take a chunk out of a Zahn book, and what are you going to do? But yeah, I've been kind of filling up, finding those, and the interesting thing too is that a lot of the off library books, there are not a ton of people checking out the Star Wars books in the library to till they're run into the ground. They're in really good shape, and most of the markings, because I'm not a fan of markings in books. Most of the markings on most of these that I've gotten are on an outer Mylar sleeve for the dust cover.
Okay.
So you can take all that off and all of a sudden you got a practically brand new book. So been doing that. As you say, we love the books. I got this. I showed you that the other day.
Good. Fantastic.
Lando Calrissian and the Mind Harp of Sharu, hardcover book club edition, I think. Yeah. Book club edition. This is rare, hard as heck to get, very expensive normally. I think I told you I got it for $50.
Yep.
Which I hadn't seen any under 100 in a couple of years. But that's just the beauty of just tracking eBay all the time. And you what you do with this stuff is you put in a variety of different keywords when you search for these things. You search for them several different times in several different ways, because what will happen is somebody will say Lando Calrissian, Mind Harp of Sharu, HC. And then somebody else will say hardcover. Well, if you're searching for hardcover and not HC, then you don't get this.
Right.
So, I do multiple searches. Sometimes I'll do spelling variations just to see if somebody mistyped something and I can get something right. And it does happen. It happens. So, yeah. So I found this for $50. There's obviously 2 more novels in the series, but only one had a hardcover.
Yep.
The Flame Wind of Ocean. And I've actually seen, I don't know if you've seen this or not, and I will tell you, I followed a Reddit about this because I'm fascinated by it and know that I absolutely have no chance of spending the time to learn the practice. But I followed a subreddit on book binding because I've seen people take that third book, Star Cave of Thonboka,
Oh,
and make their own hardcover copies of that. And that just intrigues the hell out of me. But I know I have two deficits here. One, I don't have the time. Two, I have no hand-eye coordination. So there's a reason why my brother is this great architect and I speak for a living.
yeah.
He got all of the artistic skills and I got the verbs. So, it is fascinating to me. But anyway, so I got this, and then Flame Wind of Ocean, I guess, is really the next big white whale for the collection.
I gotta wonder. I mean, it's probably only guys 40 plus who are into the Brian Dailies and the L. Neil Smith
Daily stuff.
But I mean, yeah, I gotta wonder how many people, if this was really put out there again, would younger people even enjoy these books? I mean, I don't know. It's maybe it's because we were young when we first read them, or younger, and it stuck with us. But man, there's just something about those. I can go back and read those books again. They're fun.
I love the Brian Dailies.
Oh yeah,
and the Brian Dailies and I don't know if it's because he was writing in that era that we all kind of lived through, where we were all kind of discovering what Star Wars is. But the daily books really strike me as so pure original Star Wars that I love and adore those books.
Look, I wanted to have a discussion about something here in a minute. Disney / Lucasfilm / Star Wars making money and actually putting something out to make money. But
yes,
I've always,
I'll have
been
that
something of mine that I've always said, take these core books. I don't care if they're now canon or not, they're legends or not. Go make me I don't care, 2D, 3D animated, don't really care one way or the other. Go make that. Go make those into an animated series to where people can go, whoa, wait a minute, more adventures, and then you don't have to worry about getting Harrison Ford to play the role or Mark Hamill to play the role. Go in there and get somebody who can somewhat be like the voice, Mark Thompson, and do the animated series of all these great old books that we love. I just can't see where that's not just a moneymaker, because it goes right to my next topic, so we can merge them all together. Disney saying, or Lucasfilm saying, they're maybe only doing one live action show per year on Disney Plus.
Smart.
I agreed, smart. But there's so many other things you can do with it, that where you don't have to do one good live action a year and a movie every few years. Great. I'm good with that. But we all want that fun and that filler. They've got it. They've got it sitting there waiting for them. All they have to do is do it.
Yeah. Well, and a couple of things about that. One is, my sense of it is that they're abandoning the TV stuff because they want to throw that budget at theatrical films. And they're 100% right to do that.
Yep.
The big thing about streaming was great for stock prices a couple of years ago.
Yep.
And that's really what it was. Oh, this is the future, and we're doing streaming. So every company that's worth their salt was doing streaming, not because they thought they were going to make money with it, but because it was pumping up their stock price.
Correct.
Their share price was going up because everybody just had a, what would you say? An engorgement. I'm trying to be nice here and polite here, mixed company. But they had engorgement over streaming. Oh, they're doing the future thing. Oh, it's going to be amazing. They're going to be gigantic and titans and all of this. But the reality is, streaming, the model they were using for streaming doesn't work. You can't spend tons and tons and tons of money and then go, okay, subscribers, now pay me,
right.
Remember Disney Plus started like $7.99 a month.
Yeah.
Pay me $8 a month, and I'm going to spend $200 million per show on like 8 shows between Marvel, Disney, just regular old Disney, Star Wars. I'm gonna spend $1.6 billion, and you're gonna pay me $8 a month. The math that it takes to make that work just doesn't exist. And that's in addition to, oh, by the way, we have all these other shows. I found out an interesting thing years ago about streaming services. If you have a title on your streaming service, it doesn't matter if anybody watches it or not. You have to pay licensing.
Mm.
You have to pay for the rights if you host it on your site at all. If nobody watches it, you still have to pay for that show. That show still makes money. So think about all the different things that are on Disney. Now, I know you're going, well, Disney owns them all, but for accounting's sake, they have to pay for the rights.
Yeah.
The rights cost something. So they pay, yes, they pay themselves, but they're still, that particular project goes into deficit because they're paying out money from their department to another department that, again, is still zero sum. You're still not making any money.
Mm-hmm.
And then so you got that expense, and then you've got the production expense that is not going directly to you. The math just isn't there. Original programming is okay in light doses, but what does work is putting things in a theater, because when you bypass the theater, you are just saying, to hell with you, money. I know that there are millions of dollars to be had out there, but we made this for streaming, and therefore that money can go away. I don't want those millions of dollars. They made that Clone Wars movie in 2008, and it's not a good movie, but they put it in theaters. They didn't make a ton of money. They made a little something, but you know what? Those were 4 episodes of a TV show.
Yep.
They cut the first 4 episodes of the TV show together and put them out in theaters. So that's all found money. So, and so what they did was they said, okay, we're going to make this product for TV, which will generate revenue, but we're also going to generate more revenue by putting it in theaters.
Yeah.
Why would you not do that? Here's the other thing. And I think there's some statistical data to back me up on this, but don't quote me on this because I'm not positive. I think that putting things in theaters serves as good marketing for them when they come to streaming.
Correct.
So, by the time it gets to streaming, you've built up an awareness and you're ready to go. What doesn't help theaters or streaming is going, hey, I'm going to put this in theaters for 30 days and then it's going to be on streaming. So don't worry about going to see it at the theater. So I think, a couple of things we need to have in entertainment industry. We need a wider theatrical window for just about everything, except for the things that you just know aren't going to make any money. So you literally use the theatrical run as a way to throw a few bucks your way, but mostly to market it on streaming. But for the most part, I think things should get a wider theatrical window, at least 45 days. I'm thinking 90 days, to tell you the truth. And then, it can make all the money it can make in the theaters, and you get a chance to kind of change course if you need to. If it's doing really well, you go, well, you know what? I'm going to hold this out a little bit longer. Yeah. And then you can put it out on the streaming, and you've made money at the theaters and you've made money putting it on streaming. And that's going to help save streaming, because look, streaming is the future. Streaming is not going anywhere because it's just so darn convenient, but the way that they're doing it doesn't make money. So, I will mourn the loss of the occasional gigantic 8-week long outburst by fans, screaming at each other and calling each other evil, horrible, terrible names, which is, again, completely not the purpose of this Star Wars saga in the first place. I also, by the way, enjoy that a lot of the people who do that also are steadfast crusaders against gatekeepers, but yet keep trying to kick people out of fandom, which I thought was the definition of gatekeeping. But anyway, okay. The point is, the streaming shows don't make money. They lose money. You put things in theater. So I'm okay with all of that. Your suggestion of throwing some animation in there to kind of tide people over, I think it's pretty good. It's not that expensive nowadays. It's really, you can do it cheaply.
And once you build the models for everything, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Let's face it, Star Wars has been now for a decade and a half building models of how to, world building, character building, all that, to where it is. And
but you know who's done a lot of that? DC has done a ton of that.
Yeah.
DC is constantly doing movies based on their titles and put them, just digital. We're not going to do a full scale live action theatrical film, but we're going to put this out here. We're going to put it out there for video on demand. We're going to put it out there on Blu-ray or whatever. And then we're going to put it on a streamer, Max in that case. And, so they find ways to make a little money. The other thing, I think Bob Iger has made a lot of bad moves since he came back. But one of the good moves I thought he made was that he decided, hey, we're going to put Mando on disc.
Yep.
hey, we're gonna put
Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan on disc. We're gonna
Yep.
put Andor on disc, because again, that's money that's sitting out there. That with the advent of streaming, they just said, "Oh, to hell with you, millions of dollars. I don't want you."
Right.
And it's doing two things. One, it's taking away millions that they would be making, and two, it is helping hasten the demise of physical media,
Yeah.
which it shouldn't be killed right now.
Nah, I love my physical media.
Yeah.
I love. I want to have. I want to have a copy of everything that I'm watching.
Sure.
I mean, it's just yes. Is it easy to just flip on streaming? Sure,
Yes.
but
And honestly, when I watch something, I'll usually have the disc, but I will probably watch the stream anyway. But and the generations behind us, the millennials and zennials and the pertennials and the whatever
whatever.
else, those guys don't like, by and large. I say by and large because I got my son up there who's just about to collapse in the second floor with all his Blu-rays. But by and large, that generation doesn't like things. They don't like owning things.
Yeah.
I think that's going to bite them on the butt because they'll subscribe to everything.
Yes.
And they don't own anything, and yet their bank accounts are being bled dry by all of these subscriptions. And then at the end of the day, when they cancel those subscriptions, they will have nothing to show for it. But that's a different thing. But so physical media, I get it. It's kind of going away, but also there's a thing I like to do. I like to encourage people to go read 1984. In fact, I don't encourage them. I beg them. I beg everybody to read 1984. I revisited 1984. First read it in high school and went whatever because I was a brash young teenager who cared about nothing. And during COVID, I reread it, listened to the audiobook while I was on my bike rides and stuff. And by the time I was done with it, I was shaken, just like to the core. I was shaken, not shaking. I'm Southern, but unlike Steve, I'll throw my G's on the end of my words if I need them. But I was shook. How's that?
Yeah. There you
But but that's one of those things that made me go, you know what? That coupled with the fact that there are physical examples of Kindle, Amazon going, hey, that Kindle book, we changed it on your device. What? You did what? Maybe I didn't want that book changed on my device.
Yeah.
So, for that reason, I would suggest anybody read 1984. In fact, be daring, be bold, read a digital copy of it just for grins. And then don't want physical media after that.
Yeah, I there are a few things that I think should be mandatory for all kids to read or do at some point in time. Like, learning how to handle your finances, learning how to run a checking account, all those kind of things. But there are certain books that you sit there and you go, you need to read this. Or when I was growing up, my aunt and my grandmother said, you need to watch Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, okay, I love Jimmy Stewart. I'll go check that out. And then I watch it and I was looking around going, is this real? Do people really do this there? And they're like, people do that everywhere. And I
miss
thought,
the days of that kind of filibuster, by the way.
yeah.
I want that filibuster back. I don't like the understood filibuster that they have now. I like the you got to hold the floor and talk filibuster.
Yeah. No, that would blow people's minds. I think if we went and showed a bunch of 19-year-old kids and said, here, go watch Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, or go read 1984, or certain other books or movies, they would just stare and go, this is made up, right? This isn't
Well,
like, no, well, I mean, it is, but it's also reality. So
yeah, it is, but pay attention. Pay attention. When you have a news article that gets revised by a news agency, when they go back, because that's happened in the last few months where like New York Times had some articles, they went back and changed the wording in their old articles to fit kind of a current modern day narrative. And you go, well, wait a minute, that's not the news you reported. I have an interesting book that is, this was years ago, and it was a book about the Civil War, and it was reporting on the Civil War. It was the story of the Civil War as told through the foreign press. In other words, what were they saying about it? How were they telling the story in Europe? And I thought that was a really neat approach, just because they didn't view it the same way we did. They saw it in a very, very different way. But I thought that was interesting because he literally just went back to old newspapers and said, this is what they said in England. Here's what they said in France. Here's what, and can you imagine if somebody went, well, I'm kind of embarrassed we said that back then because of today's sensibilities. Let me change those old news articles.
You need to tell me the title of that, or send me the title of that book. I'm going
to. It's called "When in the Course of Human Events."
Okay,
is the name of it. It's and it's a really interesting read, I think. But and it's not a long read. It's pretty quick. But want to really quickly. We were talking about Brian Daly, and we're talking about books. We're talking about things we're doing nowadays. This book is really neat, and I haven't gotten to tear into it deeply yet. I've only really gotten to flip through it a few times. But the Star Wars radio dramas, Brian Daly and the serialization that saved NPR, by Maria Jose Tenuto and John Tenuto. Hey, I wonder if they know each other. And they're neat people. I've heard them interviewed in a few places. You should have them on, because this is, personally, I absolutely love the Star Wars radio dramas, and I have a long history that I know we don't have time to get into.
No, they are fantastic. Yeah, no, but, they are.
And and they're written by Brian Daly, and they're just they're, in fact, the book is dedicated to Brian. It's just says for Brian at the beginning. And it's a really neat book. They went and interviewed a lot of people and got a lot of stuff that you've never heard before, and a lot of facts and information. I kind of like that. And the other thing I was going to bring up was I mentioned Clayton and Kelly earlier, because I know you had them on, and Clayton's just a real peach. He's always been really nice to me, and not everybody on the internet is. So, but that Return of the Jedi visual archive book that they did is fantastic. Just mind-blowing. And when I ordered it, I thought, well, this will probably be pretty good. It's kind of expensive, but otherwise, and it's a knockout book.
It is. I read through it. I went through it front to back, and I met up with Alfie, and I was like, you have to go through this. I was like, you have to go back, because Alfie's same age as Steve. They were both born in 1977. So while you and
Return of the Jedi is their first real Star Wars. Yeah.
Correct. So I was like, for Scott and I, it's, Star Wars is that 6-year-old, bam, right in your face, right? For you guys, Jedi is. And so I was like, I loved it so much. And for him to, he's eating it up. And for me to look at it and go, oh, there's a whole thing about Ula in there about how she came back and the outfit still fit. Yep. And I'm thinking, our most listened to podcast in the history of our podcast was Femi Taylor. Because when we interviewed her at ICCC, they gave it to me and said, here, you can go. So I posted it out, and people love that story, and they love hearing that. And she was just so real. But seeing that right there, and then seeing the letter from Warwick Davis to George Lucas.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Where he's like, I was in your movie. Can I get some of the toys? I thought, oh my gosh, how does that? Yeah, that just blew me away. So that and now, as you probably heard, Phantom Menace is their next project. So they're doing the visual archive of the Phantom Menace, which I know from heck, they should just come get you and take all the ephemera you had and say, we're going to base the book off of this, because you and I back in May did that about the Phantom Menace. Yeah. And now they're doing it. And they were on our show, and they said, okay, we can make an announcement. Boom. And they told us, we were like, whoa, okay, that's going to be pretty cool, because if this one was this cool, the Phantom Menace, for all its knocks, for all its ups and downs, it just blew people away, and it took Star Wars back by storm, right? I mean, like we discussed a few months ago. So I can't wait to see that book when it comes out.
If it's half as good as the Return of the Jedi book, it's going to be worth twice as much.
Yeah,
it's just when I think the Return of the Jedi book, the list price was like $60, and I was like, oh, it's a little high. I was thinking maybe 40, and then I got it, and I went, this is worth double this.
Oh yeah. It's fantastic. Don't tell them that, though, because the next one they'll charge.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
No.
Yeah, it's an amazing book.
It is. I'm really excited. Look, I hope that these 3 new Star Wars books that are coming out in 25, 26, and 27 will rekindle some of that for me. I mean, obviously, we talked about John Jackson Miller's book and how it was fantastic. I want to get back into that. I want to like my wife, I had, like you, for a while, I had like two of my walls. That's all they were bookshelves with Star Wars. And
Yeah.
I finally, slowly but surely, started saying, okay, I'm going to go more to digital, and some of these are going to go, this is going to go away, and that's going to go away. But I miss those days. I miss having all that, and I miss like every few months going, oh, there's a new novel coming out. Good,
Yeah.
I'm going to go jump on it. And we all know not all of them were perfect.
No, there were a lot of stinkers. In fact,
Yeah.
I'd say probably back in the day during the heyday of the
yeah.
EU stuff, probably 80% of them sucked.
Yeah, there
But
were some bad, but then when you get the good ones, it
when
just
you got the good ones, and also there was just something about seeing your guys
yeah,
continuing on every month and in some way that was meaningful, that was kind of the big jigsaw puzzle where everything really did kind of fit together as well as it could.
right.
But
And
yeah,
until
I
you
love that.
change Kiadi Mooney's age, and then it all went to.
See, I don't think that's. I saw some of that again. I've tried to stay
no.
away from a lot of the discourse, but I thought, wow, of all the things to get bent about on that
No,
show,
it didn't bother me. I didn't even think about it, but I still remember on our show, Steve was like, "All right, I'm going to talk about Kiadi Mundi." I was like, "Oh gosh." Yeah, it was just so funny. So, all right. So, what's next on the agenda for you? Whether it's obviously, we're waiting for. Well, we got the Lego show coming up next week.
Yeah.
We got Skeleton Crew coming up in December. Anything else Star Wars related coming up for you besides doing your Kiss cover band and your
Kiss cover
football
band.
and your trivia? Anything
And
like
football.
that?
And trivia. Actually, I'm going to wind up. I think I'm going to do one of the places where I do trivia wants to do a theme night, which I'm always opposed to theme nights. But they said, well, we're going to try to do one once a month and see what happens. I said, okay, fine. And then I started thinking, I was like, I'll tell you later what I think the theme should be. And I started thinking, and of course, the thing that keeps hitting me is you got to do Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
How do you not do Star Wars? And I kept going, no, I should resist that. When I'm doing trivia night, I always resist doing Star Wars trivia questions because it's too on the nose for me sometimes. I feel like people, they expect it, and so that I feel like I shouldn't do it. But I think I've made the decision overnight last night that the first theme trivia for me should probably be Star Wars.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do that. But also the thing you didn't mention is they're rebooting the Marvel books again. And I'm curious to see how that goes.
They are?
Yeah, they're rebooting them for the post, they did the first run starting in 2015, I guess. And then they rebooted them after a few years and started going Empire, Star Wars to Empire.
Yeah.
And or they did the first run was Star Wars to Empire, and then they did Empire to Jedi. Well, now they're wrapping that up and they're going to reboot all the books again and do post Jedi stories.
Okay.
Which I think is interesting because that's where Marvel in their first run really just fell on their butts hard.
Just
off the cliff. And a lot of that was because they were told they had to, they couldn't do certain things. Obviously they're not bound by any of that anymore. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I love Marvel Star Wars. I think you know that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of it going all the way back to the first issue. But that post Jedi stuff is the only, and there are people who slag Marvel Star Wars, as you well know. That's the only era that I'll give grief to. That's the only era. And even that era came up with Lumia, which I thought was a pretty cool thing.
Yes. Yeah.
But otherwise, it's awful. It's a giant festering turd. And so you have to cut that? Are you going to bleep that?
No.
But so I'm excited to see how they approach it this time around. And I would love to see if they can make some of what did work in the original Marvel Star Wars, make it work this time around. And the stuff that didn't work, get it out of there, get it gone.
I'm all for it. I that's one thing I have not kept up with in the recent time has been the comics. It's just too much going on, too many different distractions to keep up with those. I will say I'm lacking, but hey, if it rekindles things back to the old Marvel days, that'll be fun.
The only thing, the thing that makes me sad about the comics right now is, and it's just probably again just me being hyper me, but I hadn't even thought about this in a little while. And again, I think I told you I was talking to my buddy Ro, and it came up, which was I keep a spreadsheet. And I have this spreadsheet of Star Wars comic sales that goes back to 1996. And it just literally tracks the sales of every issue every month. And I just started maintaining it some years ago using John Jackson Miller's website. But unfortunately, once COVID hit and kind of the comics distribution world got turned on its head, figures have not really come out in any significant or reliable way. So I'm kind of stuck. The last figures I see that I have are April 2022.
Wow.
Because that's just what was there. But, I'm always curious. I keep up with that stuff because I'm always curious to see how these things do, how these books move. And, the comics were not in a great place when COVID hit. Sales were not great. I mean, I'm talking before COVID hit. And so I'm curious to see if they recover, if there's excitement, if there's buzz, but I can't do that because I don't have the new figures. So it's kind of driving me crazy.
Maybe they're hiding the new figures from you.
Yeah, they pretty much do. Yeah, nobody gets them. So it's a frustrating thing. And every so often, I guess I look at the thing and I go, yeah, there's my spreadsheet that's woefully incomplete.
I'm so sorry. I hate an incomplete spreadsheet.
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, I've started way too many of them and let them tail off and die. So, well, hey, I told you you're on a tight schedule. I'm on a tight schedule.
Yeah.
I appreciate you doing this. Like I said, I always feel like I learned something new. I actually wrote down stuff about Poltergeist and ET to go research, and because I want to go learn more about that. And then when in the course of human events, I'm going to go check that out because I wrote it down because you said, and this Brian Daly, the Star Wars Radio Dramas and NPR book. Now you've got me. Now you've got me going and searching for that stuff too. So, anyway, but thanks again for always doing this. Whenever I say, "Hey, let's hop on," you jump at the chance, unless you've got trivia, football, or work,
or coaches shows, or
yeah, all that stuff. I hope you have a good weekend. I hope it's enjoyable. And thanks for always doing this. And like I said, let's get Mr. Michael Nip on here with us sometime soon, and we can plan it out. Maybe in the next few weeks or whatever, we'll get him on. We'll all do a regular show together if we can make the night work. So
totally in favor of that. Totally in favor.
You got it. Well, Scott, thank you to all the followers, listeners of Rule the Galaxy. Thank you guys for paying attention and listening, just having fun, because today was just that, just a fun show. So, let's have some more fun Star Wars coming up with the Legos and with Skeleton Crew. And until next week, when the regular crew is all back, may the Force be with you.